In 1992, a retired coal miner with knees so bad he could barely walk mixed two common kitchen items in a glass jar. 10 minutes later, the swelling stopped, and he finally slept through the night. That 10-cent remedy is number 4 on this list of forgotten treatments. You do not need expensive pharmacy creams to find fast relief today. These 25 remedies were designed for one specific thing, which is survival. They helped people who worked hard manual labor jobs and could not afford to take a day off to rest. People stretched their tiny paychecks across 4 weeks and prayed their joints would hold up. Let us count down the 25 forgotten poor man joint remedies ready in 10 minutes. Number 25 is the warm saltwater compress. This was the treatment that told a tired worker that relief was only minutes away. A senior with aching hands could dissolve a large handful of plain table salt into a bowl of hot water. It cost almost absolutely nothing and provided instant, soothing heat. You took an old cotton cloth and soaked it in the salty water before wringing it out. Then you wrapped it tightly around the painful joint and sat in a quiet chair. In 10 minutes, the salt drew out excess fluid and the heat relaxed the tight muscles. Grandmothers in old tenement buildings used this trick every single winter evening. Number 24 is the crushed cabbage leaf wrap. If you grew up poor in rural areas, you probably saw your grandparents doing this. You took a heavy rolling pin and bruised a large green cabbage leaf until the natural juices started to flow. The natural anti-inflammatory compounds in the cabbage acted fast to pull the heat out of a swollen knee. You tied the bruised leaf around the joint with a piece of cloth and left it there while you rested. A single head of cabbage cost a few pennies and could treat a painful joint for an entire week. There were no side effects and no dangerous chemicals involved in this process. It was pure nature doing the hard work while you sat and waited. Number 23 is the apple cider vinegar soak. Vinegar was always kept in the pantry for pickling, but it had a secret medicinal life too. You poured 1 cup of vinegar into a small basin of warm water and soaked your painful hands or feet. The acidity helped break down uric acid crystals in the joints within minutes. For an elderly person living alone on a fixed income, this was a Tuesday night miracle. Apple cider vinegar was cheap and never went bad sitting on the pantry shelf. You could sit at the kitchen table and read the newspaper while your pain slowly melted away. The smell was strong, but the relief was completely undeniable. Number 24 is the raw potato juice rub. Potatoes fed families during hard times, but they also healed bodies broken by labor. You grated a raw potato and squeezed the starchy juice onto a piece of clean cloth. The raw potato juice contains powerful soothing properties that cool down inflamed skin and joints immediately. When farmers came inside after a brutal day of harvesting, they used this on their sore wrists. You simply rubbed the juice directly into the skin and waited 10 minutes for it to dry. The starch formed a slight crust that seemed to pull the pain right out of the deep tissue. It required no special skills to make and utilized food scraps that would otherwise be thrown away. Number 21 is the standard yellow mustard plaster. This is an ancient technique that poor families relied on before heating pads existed. You mixed dry mustard powder with a little flour and warm water to create a thick paste. Then you spread it between 2 layers of thin cotton cloth to protect the skin from burns. When you applied this to an aching shoulder, the heat generated was intense and immediate. The mustard stimulated massive blood flow to the painful area and washed away the throbbing ache. It cost a fraction of a doctor visit and worked faster than any modern pill. You just had to be careful to remove it after 10 minutes so the skin stayed safe. Here is the first pattern break and something you should think about. The remedies on this list are not just simple recipes, but rather brilliant survival strategies. An older person living alone faces the terrifying reality of losing their physical mobility. When your knees hurt too much to walk to the kitchen, the entire world becomes a prison. These rapid 10-minute remedies solved the massive problem of immediate, debilitating pain. When you are 80 years old and cannot open a jar because your fingers ache, you need help right now. A simple soak or a hot compress is the difference between independence and calling a child for help.
That is what these treatments were built for, and they prioritized pure survival over everything else. Number 20 is the cold castor oil pack. Castor oil was a staple in every single Depression-era medicine cabinet. You poured a small amount of the thick oil onto a piece of wool and placed it over the throbbing joint. It deeply penetrated the skin and reduced severe inflammation faster than most oral medications. Older generations knew that castor oil was thick and messy, but entirely worth the hassle. They wrapped the oiled cloth in plastic to keep their bedsheets completely clean. 10 minutes of resting with this pack brought hours of smooth and fluid movement back to the joint. A single bottle of castor oil lasted for years and saved countless dollars. Number 19 is the simple Epsom salt foot bath. Factory workers who stood on concrete floors all day considered this a holy ritual. You tossed half a cup of cheap Epsom salts into a basin of very warm water. The magnesium in the salt absorbed directly through the skin to relax severe muscle spasms and joint stiffness. This cost mere pennies per use and provided a profound sense of total body relaxation. You soaked your feet for exactly 10 minutes and felt the heavy burden of the day wash down the drain. Doctors today still recommend this exact same treatment because human biology has not changed. Your grandfather did not know the science, but he knew exactly what made his ankles stop hurting. Number 18 is the ginger root paste. Before ginger was considered an expensive superfood, it was just a cheap root sold in local markets. You peeled a small piece and grated it finely before mixing it with a few drops of water. Spreading this warm paste over a sore knuckle brought a rushing wave of fresh circulation. The heat from the ginger works exactly like modern capsaicin creams, but costs essentially nothing. It takes only 2 minutes to prepare and less than 10 minutes to feel the deep, warming effect. For a person suffering from morning stiffness, this was the fastest way to get their hands working again. The leftover ginger simply went right back into the soup pot for dinner. Number 17 is the hot onion poultice. Onions were always available and always cheap, even in the absolute worst economic times. You chopped an onion and heated it in a dry skillet until it was warm and fragrant. Then you wrapped the warm pieces in a towel and pressed it against a stiff neck or a bad knee. The sulfur compounds in the onion vaporized and penetrated the skin to calm down angry nerves. It smelled like a harsh kitchen, but it worked like an absolute charm. Seniors relied on this during cold winter months when damp weather made their arthritis scream. It was a perfect example of turning ordinary food into powerful emergency medicine. Number 16 is the cayenne pepper infused oil. This is a poor man remedy that eventually became a billion-dollar pharmaceutical industry. People mixed simple olive oil with hot cayenne pepper powder from their spice rack. You let it sit for a moment and then rubbed a tiny amount over the painful joint. The pepper interrupts the pain signals being sent from your joints directly to your brain. You feel a tingling heat within 10 minutes, and the deep ache simply vanishes into thin air. A single batch of this oil cost 50 cents to make and lasted for 6 entire months. It was a harsh but deeply effective way to force the body to ignore chronic pain. Number 15 is the warm black tea bag compress. Tea was a luxury for some, but a medicinal necessity for the working class. After making a pot of tea, you took the warm, wet tea bags and placed them over small, swollen joints. The tannins in the black tea are natural astringents that rapidly reduce swelling and puffiness. This was especially popular for older women whose finger joints throbbed after sewing or knitting all day.
You did not waste the tea because you already drank the beverage first. The leftover bags provided a gentle and comforting heat that cost literally 0 extra cents. 10 minutes of resting with warm tea bags on your hands felt like a highly expensive spa treatment. Here is the second pattern break and a harsh reality about the medical industry. The pharmaceutical companies do not want you to remember these incredibly cheap tricks. There is 0 profit margin in a cabbage leaf or a handful of table salt. They cannot sell a commercial for a warm, wet towel or a simple ginger paste. The simple items that kept our grandparents moving and independent are actively hidden from us today. Modern stores sell tiny tubes of pain relief cream for $30 that contain the exact same active ingredients.
The economics of aging are cruel, but our ancestors knew how to fight back with household items. These methods give power back to the people who actually need it the most. Number 14 is the garlic and olive oil rub. Garlic was considered the absolute ultimate healer in many immigrant households. You crushed a clove of fresh garlic and let it soak in a spoonful of ordinary oil. Rubbing this mixture into a painful hip joint brought a deep and penetrating relief. The allicin in the garlic is a potent anti-inflammatory agent that works quickly upon contact. Italian and Eastern European grandmothers swore by this method whenever the weather turned cold and damp. The smell was undoubtedly powerful, but nobody cared about the odor when they were finally free from pain. It took minutes to prepare and offered a peaceful night of deep sleep. Number 13 is the warm milk and turmeric drink. While not a compress, this 10-minute internal remedy acts like a liquid blanket for inflamed joints. You stirred a small spoon of cheap yellow turmeric powder into a cup of heated milk. Drinking this golden mixture sent powerful soothing compounds through the entire bloodstream. Turmeric was historically cheap and readily available in most diverse working-class neighborhoods. The active ingredient attacks joint pain from the inside out and begins working incredibly fast. Seniors drank this right before bed to ensure they would not wake up completely stiff in the morning. It was a warm and comforting ritual that tasted like pure healing. Number 12 is the camphor block dissolved in rubbing alcohol. You could buy a block of pure camphor at the local pharmacy for a nickel. You dropped it into a cheap bottle of rubbing alcohol and waited for it to dissolve. This created a powerful cooling liniment that rivaled any expensive sports cream sold today. You splashed a little bit onto your hands and rubbed it deeply into an aching lower back. The alcohol evaporated instantly and left the cooling camphor to numb the pain away. 10 minutes after application, the sharp throbbing ache was replaced by a pleasant numb sensation. This single bottle sat in the medicine cabinet for years and served the whole family. Number 11 is the baking soda and water paste. Every single household kept a box of baking soda for baking and general cleaning. When a joint became suddenly red and inflamed, you mixed the powder with cold water. You slathered this chalky white paste over the skin and waited 10 minutes for it to dry hard. Baking soda is highly alkaline and helps neutralize the acidic nature of severe local inflammation. When the paste dried, it created a tightening sensation that felt incredibly supportive and solid. You washed it off with warm water, and the joint felt remarkably lighter and less angry. It was a brilliant emergency treatment that cost a tiny fraction of a single penny. Number 10 is the hot pine needle tea compress. People living in rural wooded areas had free medicine growing right in their own backyards. You gathered a handful of fresh pine needles and boiled them in a small pot of water. You soaked a heavy cloth in this fragrant water and wrapped it around a painful elbow. Pine needles are packed with high levels of vitamin C and natural pain-relieving oils. The steam rising from the cloth smelled like a deep forest and cleared the sinuses while healing the joint. In 10 minutes, the deep forest heat penetrated the bone and restored normal fluid movement. It was a beautiful example of using the immediate environment to survive hard physical times.
Number 9 is the hot towel and eucalyptus oil method. When you could not afford a hot bath, you could always afford a single hot towel. You boiled water and added 3 tiny drops of cheap eucalyptus essential oil. Then you carefully wrung out a thick towel and draped it heavily over your painful knees.
The moist heat opens up the blood vessels, while the eucalyptus provides a sharp, cooling contrast. This combination confuses the nerve endings and completely stops the transmission of pain signals. 10 minutes under a steaming towel felt like a completely new lease on a difficult life. It required nothing more than an old rag and a very cheap bottle of strong oil. Here is the third pattern break and the truth about living with chronic physical pain. Half the seniors in the world who live alone simply accept their pain because treating it seems too exhausting. Going to the doctor takes enormous energy, and buying medications takes too much money. These rapid 10-minute remedies were the absolute perfect answer to that quiet despair. You could make these treatments when you were tired or sad or feeling completely alone. They met you exactly where you were and asked almost nothing of your limited daily energy. The most important ingredient in every single one of these remedies was pure accessibility. They proved that relief was still possible even when your wallet was completely empty. Number 8 is the dandelion root steep. Dandelions were considered annoying weeds by wealthy people, but they were free medicine for the poor. You pulled the roots from the ground and washed them before dropping them into hot water. You applied the warm liquid to swollen finger joints using a soft cotton pad. Dandelion roots contain natural compounds that flush out the toxins causing joint stiffness and severe swelling. 10 minutes of this warm application made rigid morning hands soft and pliable again. Older women used this trick before starting their daily baking or heavy laundry chores. It was a secret weapon hidden right in the middle of the front lawn. Number 7 is the raw burdock leaf wrap. This was heavily utilized by farmers who knew exactly what the local plants could do. Burdock leaves are massive and hold moisture incredibly well when wrapped around a human limb. You simply placed a large leaf around a bad knee and tied it with a piece of string. The leaf acts as a gentle natural poultice, pulling excess heat and fluid from the damaged tissue. You could walk around the house with this wrap on and feel the cooling effect within 10 minutes. It cost nothing and required absolutely zero preparation time in the kitchen. Nature provided the bandage and the medicine in one single, massive green leaf. Number 6 is the white willow bark tea compress. Long before aspirin was manufactured in giant chemical laboratories, it was harvested from willow trees. People scraped the inner bark from a tree and steeped it in boiling hot water. They soaked a cloth in this dark liquid and pressed it firmly against a throbbing joint. White willow bark contains salicin, which is the exact same chemical foundation as modern aspirin. The pain relief was profound and bypassed the stomach completely by absorbing through the skin. 10 minutes of this compress provided the exact same relief as a modern synthetic pill. It was ancient wisdom keeping working-class people moving and fully employed. Number 5 is the egg yolk and table salt paste. When a joint was sprained or severely swollen, this strange mixture was the primary defense. You separated an egg yolk and mixed it with an entire spoon of heavy salt. You painted this yellow paste over the swollen ankle and let it sit for 10 minutes. The salt draws out the excess fluid, while the fats in the egg yolk nourish the stretched skin. As it dries, it creates a stiff cast that physically supports the joint like a medical bandage. Dancers and manual laborers relied on this cheap trick to recover from minor daily injuries. It washed away easily and left the joint feeling stable and remarkably strong. Number 4 is the legendary coal miner remedy, which is turpentine and pure lard. This sounds dangerous today, but it was an absolute necessity for men working deep underground. You mixed a tiny drop of pine turpentine into a spoon of thick animal lard. You rubbed this greasy mixture heavily into knees, destroyed by crawling in small, dark spaces. The turpentine acted as a powerful counter-irritant that drove blood flow incredibly deep into the muscle. The lard protected the surface skin from burning and kept the area warm and highly insulated. Within 10 minutes, a man who could not walk was able to stand up and face the day. It was harsh and smelled terrible, but it kept entire mining communities functioning. Number 3 is the wild comfrey root salve. Comfrey was widely known as knit bone because it healed physical injuries so incredibly fast. People kept a jar of comfrey root soaked in oil sitting on their dark kitchen countertops. When an old injury flared up, they rubbed this dark green oil directly onto the painful spot. The plant contains allantoin, which forces cells to regenerate and reduces massive, deep tissue inflammation. A 10-minute massage with this simple oil made a stiff joint feel 10 years younger. You only had to make the oil once a year, and it served the family through every single winter. It was the absolute closest thing to pure magic that a poor family could own. Number 2 is the traditional stinging nettle swat. This sounds like pure torture, but it is one of the oldest arthritis remedies on earth. You took a fresh branch of stinging nettles and lightly brushed it against a painful joint. The tiny needles injected natural histamines and formic acid directly into the troubled local area. For the first 10 minutes, the skin felt hot and tingly, like a very mild sunburn. But right after that, the chronic, deep joint pain completely disappeared for several days. People who lived in damp climates swore by this method because it shocked the body into healing itself. It cost nothing and provided relief that no pharmacy pill could ever hope to match. Number 1 is the ultimate grandmother remedy, which is the hot water bottle and thick wool. Sometimes the simplest answer is the absolute best one for a body in severe distress. You filled a rubber bottle with hot water and wrapped the painful joint in a thick wool sweater. You placed the hot bottle over the wool and just closed your tired eyes. The wool trapped the intense heat and created a microclimate of healing around the terrible pain. 10 minutes of this treatment relaxed every single muscle and allowed the joint fluid to move freely. There were no messy oils and no strange smells to wash off your skin later. It was just pure, gentle heat, offering comfort to a person who truly needed a break. Here is my ultimate challenge to you today. Try just one of these simple 10-minute remedies the next time you feel a joint ache. Do not reach for the expensive cream, but try the salt or the warm towel instead. Sit in a quiet chair and give your body 10 minutes to actually heal the old-fashioned way. These remedies were never just about saving a few dollars at the corner pharmacy. They were about keeping human dignity intact when the world was harsh and unforgiving. Leave a comment and tell me which of these forgotten methods you are going to try first. These are simple proofs that healing can be cheap and effective and entirely within your own hands.